Translation studies is something that I heard about for the first time, I think probably 2 years after I finished my BA degree. So I'm originally Spanish, and I did a traditional modern languages degree, which had lots of language and linguistics, all very theoretical, but no translation as such. When I finished my degree, I decided to go for something more applied. I came to the UK, to the University of Birmingham, and I did an MA and an MPhil later in special applications of linguistics. And at the time in Birmingham, that meant basically that you were presented with two main research areas. One was already very consolidated, it was corpus linguistics, and in Birmingham it had a very applied dimension, which was about the use of corpora for the creation of dictionaries, other reference works like grammars, etc. And on the other hand, there was an emerging area of research, which was what we know now as forensic linguistics. So after doing all that, really without much exposure to translation, either at BA level or in these initial stages of my postgraduate studies, I went back to Spain and I did a PhD on forensic linguistics. And so what I was working on was, I think the title of my thesis was something like an investigation of attempted deception in hoax emergency calls. So basically I was investigating phone calls that people did to the British 999 services reporting emergencies that didn't exist. So I was working with spoken language. I was using discourse analysis and systemic functional linguistics as my main theoretical frameworks, and that's what I carried on doing throughout my PhD. But there was something else I had to start doing while I was writing my PhD, and that was translating. So in order to supplement my income, I had to work as a freelance translator in two main areas. One was audiovisual translation, and the other one was what most current MA programs in translation studies would call translating for international organizations. So I translated for the EU, the European Parliament, the European Commission, for the World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization, and so on. And it was then that I thought that I could find myself now and then reflecting on some of the linguistic stuff that I had learned outside that kind of translation framework. And as I said, exploring how some of those things applied in my own translation practice. And then things just developed gradually. So I got a lectureship in translation studies in Spain, and I was then at the time teaching translation, doing translation professionally, and then beginning to do research on translation as well. So what I do now at the moment mainly is audiovisual translation, not the most sort of orthodox sort of audiovisual translation research, but that's the field I work in. And so one could say this is very, very different indeed from what I did for my PhD, but on the other hand, there are many aspects in common, there are many connections. So I work with texts that rely a lot on spoken language. I'm very interested in the interplay between language with other forms of semiotics that you find in audiovisual texts. And funnily enough, systemic functional linguistics that I became acquainted with when I did my MA and so on has proved very, very useful in developing my research along the current lines. And so looking back, one sees that there are these kind of loose ends that you can still tidy up after a number of years, that you can recycle and that you can develop further in different ways within a completely different area of research from the one you originally started with.